Welcome to Setlist Stand-Up Without a Net live at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival!
Where some of the UK's favorite comedians are coming on stage with no preparation whatsoever. We'll tell them what they're going to be talking about in stand-up created in the moment and under pressure.
For a comedian to be in a position where you've worked for 25 years and then you're back to feeling like you're doing your first gig, there's a genuine feeling that you can fail, you know, and people do fail. It's very exciting to watch. I think it's very exciting to do.
Would you please welcome to the stage the brand new Never Before Seen setlist, Mr. Richard Herring.
Hello! How's it going? Who's had a drink? Yeah, me, mainly me. Thank goodness. Let's see how this goes. So, I don't really know what Gumtree is. So, when they discovered Jimmy Savile had been fixing it for a lot of kids, they had to think of a good name for the operation to go and catch the other celebrities. But to begin with, there was tossing up between the name Yew Tree, which obviously it's nice. It's kind of an English name. Some people say, why don't we make it a gum tree? Because, you know, they are quite sticky, a lot of these guys. And there's sort of sap coming out of them going, any child tries to climb up them. But they said no, they never wore a rubber. So it would be inappropriate. If only I knew the reference. Jesus Christ, of course, the Son of God. He threw over those tables in the temple. He got very cross. That was the only time he lost his temper with some tables, which is ironic. He was a carpenter. I think it was you'd think he would like tables and have respect for them. But he didn't. He hated those tables. That was his main problem. I mean, he could have fixed them. That's the thing. He could have fixed them afterwards, and he didn't. And the disciples were annoyed with Jesus' carpentry-based hypocrisy. Judas especially. But I think Judas was very annoyed at the willful destruction of tables from a man of peace. And so he organised a party for Jesus that he thought would teach him a lesson in quite an extreme way. So he got together with his friends Pontius Pilate and some Roman guards. This was all part of the ruse. Jesus at this stage had no idea what was going on. It was like they were essentially, those Roman guards were just the Bethlehem equivalent of strippers, dialer policemen. They're just guys dressed up going, yeah, pretend to be Roman guards. And so one of the disciples lopped off one of them ears, and he was furious about that because, of course, he was just doing his job of organising this surprise crucifixion party. This was the build-up to it. Luckily, Jesus could magic his ear back on. That was the good thing about Jesus. He was useful to have around in the case of minor injuries. That was. I feel Jesus didn't do enough work in his ability to cure everyone. Sort of slightly selfish. He cures about 14 lepers in his time on Earth. Left quite a lot of lepers with leprosy. That was. Some people say he's amazing. I say he's a bit of a cunt, to be honest. But he cured that bloke's ear, and thank fuck for that, because they would have lost their deposit with the strippers. And then it was all like, surprise, don't worry, Jesus, we've got a great surprise lined up for you. And Jesus was pleased about it, really, because if you think about it, if Jesus hadn't been crucified, if there hadn't been this crucifixion party for him, our souls wouldn't have been saved. So, in a way, didn't Judas do us all an enormous favour? I mean, he saved our souls. If Judas hadn't organised this party for Jesus and Jesus hadn't been crucified, he'd just lived into his old age, died shagging Mary Magdalene. That would be the last we'd heard of him. So thank God for Judas organising this crucifixion. What I'm saying is fucking good that Jesus Christ was crucified. Stick that on your bloody internet programme in America. Put that in the central... The southern states of America. What I'm saying, it's good if you think about it. That Jesus was crucified. You've got a great night ahead for you. Thank you for having me.
Richard, this is Jesus. You have one more topic.
One more topic. Yeah, because I hadn't got myself into enough trouble. Well, you know, Andrea Dworkin did say all men are potential rapists. If it wasn't her, it was one of the others like her. They're all this, they're interchangeable. And, you know, thank God they're making a very good point, because I think, theoretically, we're all a little bit rapey. But at least in our minds, Jesus, of course, said it's a sin if you think in your mind, if you think there's something disgusting in your mind, you have sinned. In which case, I'm fucked. I'm going to hell, because just looking at you three in the front row, what I've made you three do, just in that instant bang, I mean, it's disgusting. So if in theory I'm thinking of those things, in theory you have not consented to me imagining those things, have you? In fact, looking at you, I think you're pretty much given a clear sign that you do not want me to start imagining those things. But I'm imagining them. I'm not going to act on the imagination. That would be illegal. But one day in the future, they will start operating on these minds. You know, they've got computers that can read our thoughts. And the minute you think something like that, and now I've mentioned it, all the guys in the room are now looking at these girls and thinking the same thing. So we've all become criminals all together. We are theoretically rapey. The stuff going on in my head is better than what I'm saying. I have to say, unbelievably, I'm censoring myself a little bit. You've been lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
I knew Gumtree was a thing. I couldn't think what it was. Yeah. So then you have to go a different way and find your way through it. But it's exciting, and you know that's why comedians will do this for a T-shirt. That's why we do it. I did it for a T-shirt.